Hello and welcome to episode 64. 64. I can't believe we made it this far. To the 214 Sports Show. I'm your host, TJ Croats. I'm joined alongside my good friend, Joseph Duffey. Joseph, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, TJ. It's been a good past week of DFW sports. Got to see a cool walk-off from El Bombi against the LA Dodgers in the Easter series. Very awesome to watch. Wish they could have won the series, but it was cool nonetheless to see a classic El Bombi moment with Joe Davis in the call, who seems to always be there for the big time moments for Adolis Garcia.
Oh, yeah, that is for sure. Um, Me and Joe are both fighting for our lives right now, trying to test for our final exam that we have on the day that this episode is uploaded. We record this on Wednesdays. We'll upload this on Thursday at 11 a.m. But you know what? We still decided we have to do this podcast because it's an important week of Dallas sports, of course, the Cowboys going into the draft. Who are they going to pick? They're almost on the clock for pick number 12. Are they going to trade up? Or are they going to trade down? Who knows? Nobody knows yet. And we have a very special interview coming up about the Dallas Cowboys with a Dallas Cowboys reporter, Tommy Yarrish, our good friend. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the Dallas Stars. Of course, we're kind of in a chokehold here with this series because it's kind of tough. It's definitely a tough series, and I wish that we could react to Game 3, but we can't because of our recording circumstances. But we will talk a little bit about the series, the first two games. We'll go into the Mavericks, of course. Everybody can uh, have I don't know. We'll talk about the Mavs. I mean, I don't know what else to explain about the Mavericks. You know, we all it all sucks. And then we'll talk about the Rangers, of course, because they're in their regular season and they're playing their games. So, anyways, let's get started. We have on today's date for Dallas sports. It's going to be April 24th, 2016, 9 years ago. The Dallas Stars, they defeated the Minnesota Wild in Game 6 to advance to the second round by a final score of 5-4. They won the uh, Central Division this year. Um, the Stars entered the third period up 4-0 in Minnesota with goals from John Klingberg, Jason Spezza, Patrick Sharp, and Jamie Benn. Some names from the past, one
Oof.
name from the present still. But the Wild responded. They scored 4 goals themselves in the third alone against goalie Kari Leninen, and it was a goal from Alex Goligoski. Crazy name pull that helped the Stars win 5-4. They play the Blues in the second round. Of course, they ended up losing in seven in the second round to the Blues, but still a good little memory. Hopefully, they can advance past the first round this year as well.
I remember that game like yesterday. Am I thinking of the same? Is it the same series? I thought he hit this game winner. Let me see.
It technically,
I'm thinking of the overtime winner against the Predators.
you're thinking about the Predators, which was
Yeah.
let
John
me
Klingberg.
yeah, John Klingberg. The Alex Goligoski goal wasn't really technically a game. I mean, it is a game-winning goal in hockey terms, but it was when we're up 4-3. He made it 5-3. The Wild ended up scoring another goal in the end to make it 5-4. But yeah, I'm still holding on to confidence with the Dallas Stars. Maybe so, maybe not. By the end of Game 3, we'll see. But anyways, let's go ahead and say that episode 64, we're dedicating this to Macau Granlund, one of the Finnish Mafia players on the Dallas Stars, Helsinki South. Um, gotta give it to him since the Stars are in the playoffs. I don't know who else would be 64. I feel like there is some good candidates out there, but Macau Granlund,
Wait,
present
we're,
Stars player,
we're getting
gotta
there
give
where
it
it's at that point where it's getting tougher.
to him.
A little tougher. We're gonna start relying on football players more
It's gonna be a
because of
lot of football
these big old
players.
numbers. Yeah.
Maybe some obscure Rangers players out there. Um, it's gonna be tough to get to episode 77 though.
My guy Tom. Yeah. Tell me about it. You go with Tom Rafferty. Oh yeah, the
Tom
former
Rafferty.
Cowboy.
Oh, what a pull.
How did I know who that was?
Still gonna go episode 77. We're gonna be like, episode 77 dedicated to current Rangers player Luke Jackson, our favorite 77 player of all time in Dallas
The
sports.
greatest ever.
So, anyways, yeah, that's on today's date. Start off this episode with something on a good note. We are gonna head into our next segment. Well, I guess our first segment, the Dallas Cowboys. Joe, you had a quick little interview with Cowboys reporter Tommy Yarrish. We talked about it a little bit beforehand, but Tommy Yarrish, very good reporter for the Dallas Cowboys, our good friend. I guess we'll go ahead and show that tape real quick.
Yeah, we got to catch up really with one of our good buddies from the past. We met him at a sports broadcasting organization. We both, of course, were in the University of Texas at Austin, or still at the University of Texas at Austin, rather, and got to meet Tommy, who has mentored us along with a lot of great people who have gone on in their careers in journalism. But Tommy now works for the Dallas Cowboys and their media team, whether it be writing or on their little radio shows they put on in the morning. So here was my interview with him last night over the radio. All right, welcome to our Cowboys block. I'm joined with a very special guest here on the 214 Sports Show, ahead of the draft in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I'm joined with the one, the only Tommy Yarrish. Tommy, how you doing?
Doing great, Joe. Always good to talk to you. You've been, such a good friend and supporter of mine since our time together at Texas, and being able to, watch you grow and watch the show grow has been really fun, man. I'm super excited for you, and I'm excited to be here today. Thanks for having me.
And for sure, I mean, it's an honor and privilege for you to even join this podcast. Um, Been one of my biggest mentors, of course, and the respect is mutual. Of course, we have him on here as the Cowboys reporter here. Tommy is working for the Dallas Cowboys media department. And before we get into the content for this little brief block, Tommy, tell us about yourself, your journey through broadcast journalism, journalism as a whole, as a student, and then eventually leading to the Dallas Cowboys.
Sure. So I started out as I grew up as just another kid from Chicago. Spent the first 13 years there, and moved down to Texas and Houston area. Went to Bridgeland High School in Cypress, so I got pretty acclimated to, how big of a deal football was down here at every single level. It wasn't like that as much up north. Obviously, everybody loves the Bears, but it is a little bit different in Texas, and so I learned pretty quickly about that. Always wanted to be on the media side of things. Once I figured out that I was no good at any sports, and so I jumped right into that right away in high school, covering some Texas high school sports, and continued that track in college and started covering Texas during my time at Texas, my last 2 years there. And then there's some very great people around me and a lot of luck. And what I would like to think is a little bit of hard work too. I was able to land this job with the Cowboys. Been here about, I think we're going on 8 months or so now, maybe a little bit less than that, but it's been a lot of fun and I've really enjoyed it. But always look forward to coming back and talking to you guys because, you guys were huge for me. And a lot of my close friends are still back there, and always willing to do whatever I can for you guys.
Yeah, and then for those who don't realize, of course, me and TJ have mentioned it many times in the podcast. We know each other as students at the University of Texas, but even deeper, we've all worked in the sports organization, a broadcasting organization for student television at UT called Texas Student Television in their sports wing. That's where we met so many mentors and, guys that passed on here like Adam Ogburn, like Carter Yates who now works for Dave Campbell's Texan Live, and of course Tommy here joined with us in the call and now works for the Dallas Cowboys. Again, thank you for joining us, Tommy. Let's dive in really quick for this draft. An overall view, looking at 1 and 2 in the draft. Obviously, we kind of have a kind of a good gist of who's going there for now, whether it be Cam Ward, Travis Hunter. It's pretty predictable who's going there, whether it be Ward or the Heisman winner. Who do you think the New York Giants can or will select at number 3, however?
Yeah, I think 1, 2, 3 is pretty set in this draft, Joe. I think it's Cam Ward 1 to the Titans. I think it's Travis Hunter 2 to the Browns, and I think it's Abdul Carter at 3 to the Giants, the edge rusher from Penn State. I know there was some Shador buzz out there, and the Giants did a lot of their homework on Sure Sanders, but you just look at the situation that New York is in. They bring in 2 quarterbacks in free agency and guys that are kind of in a shortened window, and it's in a regime really that I feel like is in a shortened window in terms of, hey, they've got to nail these picks in this draft because a lot of these guys' jobs are on the line. And so if one of the top 2 consensus overall players in this class is on the table for you there at number 3, I think you've got to walk that card in. There's quarterbacks they can take in the second round, I mean, if Shedeur Sanders is a guy they like and they don't take him at 3, that might be a guy who's able to drop to them at 34. So I think at 3, Abdul Carter is the absolute pick. And then it'll be interesting to see what they do at 34, because that's going to answer the question of, okay, do the Giants feel good about going into this season with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston as their quarterback room, or are they going to, bank on a guy in this year's draft? Because a little bit too of it, I think, Joe, and I know it's kind of counterintuitive to what I said about the organization and how they are in terms of, hey, some of these guys might be picking for their jobs here in this draft. You look at next year's quarterback class and you say, okay, maybe if we don't get the season we want to, we can grab our guy next year in a Garrett Nussmeier or in a Cade Klubnik if those guys decide to enter the draft. So it's an interesting case study for sure, because you also wonder, okay, if it's a Shedeur Sanders or a Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe going to beat out a Jameis Winston or Russell Wilson early on, or are we going to have to sit and let them develop? So interesting case for the Giants, but to go back to answering your initial question, I think it's Abdul Carter from Penn State, the edge rusher at number 3.
Yeah, and I don't know if this was rage bait on my Twitter timeline, but I saw someone giving a profile about Abdul Carter. Might have been a reach here, but they were saying his ceiling is Lawrence Taylor, his floor is Micah Parsons. Now, I don't know about that, but I can see what they're trying to do with that profile, because he's obviously a pretty big guy, kind of not exactly the most speedy edge rusher, but he knows how to bend around the tackles and get home for a sack. And for a Giants defense that was pretty underrated last season, of course, they didn't have Wink Martindale anymore, who went on to the Michigan Wolverines to replace the fallen Harbaugh regime as he moved on to the LA Chargers. It's a defense that could be even better if they get an Abdul Carter. And as division rival of the Dallas Cowboys, adding Russell Wilson, who had a little bit of a career resurgence last year, still left a few Steelers fans underwhelming. It might be a very high pressure situation for this Giants team, especially for Brian Dable, who is surprisingly being brought back again. I honestly didn't think he would be brought back, but he is definitely on the hot seat, in my opinion. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would agree, and that's why I think it goes back to my point of saying, hey, a lot of these guys are coaching for their jobs and picking for their jobs in terms of the GM and the front office staff. Is you gotta make some of these roster additions come to fruition. You look at their top to bottom, they've got some really good players on this roster. I mean, you look at how good Malik Neighbors was for them, their first round pick last year. Dexter Lawrence is one of the best defensive tackles at the 1-tech spot in the entire league. So they've got the young talent there, and with with adding Abdul Carter, they're really beefing up their pass rush, and that's something that was kind of lackluster a bit at times. And you got Brian Burns coming back. They made a deal for him, and so you got 2 really solid edge rushers there in Burns and Carter, and Lawrence in the middle. I mean, that's a pretty good defensive line, especially when you think about the NFC East in terms of the teams and how well they've bolstered up on the offensive line. I mean, you look at Philadelphia, they had one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and they go on and win a Super Bowl because of it. Conversely, they had one of the best defensive lines in the NFL, and that was a big reason why they went to the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl. So, the line of scrimmage is such an important part of the game of football, regardless of which level you play at. And I think that an Abdul Carter pick would certainly be a step in the right direction.
Number 9 in team sacks for the New York Giants last season with 45. Kind of slowed down a little bit towards the end of the season, but still an overall underrated defense. Moving on to, you mentioned the word regime a few minutes ago. It's a new regime for the Dallas Cowboys. Brian Schottenheimer, the new head coach for America's team. Clayton Adams, the new OC. A whole new regime from top to bottom on this coaching staff. And it's going to be his first draft, Brian Schottenheimer. Do you think there's pressure on him to hit this draft out of the park, or is there a little bit of leeway because it is his first?
I think there's always going to be pressure, especially when you hire a guy like Brian Schottenheimer, who has so much to prove because he's never been a head coach in the NFL. He was not a candidate elsewhere in terms of interview processes for other teams for their head coaching vacancies. And this is a guy that, even Jerry Jones in an introductory press conference said, this is a risky hire. This is a risky pick. And I think that Brian Schottenheimer, you got to give him a lot of credit because he has absolutely hit the ground running. And I think that, you know, we've talked about it a lot about him because of his profile and his makeup, but we're still undervaluing just how much that 20 plus years of experience of being in the league and, having his dad, Marty Schottenheimer, who's a Hall of Fame head coach, in his life has kind of prepared him for this moment because this has been a long time coming for Brian Schottenheimer. And now he's getting his shot and he's not wasting any time. He hit the ground running. They went and got a heck of a staff. I mean, this is from top to bottom is a really impressive staff, I feel like. And I think it kind of exceeded my expectations of what the team was going to gather and put around him. I mean, you bring back Matty Foose, who wasn't a great head coach in Chicago, but he was a really good defensive play caller. And, the guys on his staff, you think about the defensive backs coach who developed some of the best DBs in the league in terms of guys like Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon and Tyreek Stevenson sometimes. So it's a good staff. And on the offensive side of the ball, you've got a good mix of guys who want to emphasize the run game, and a Clayton Adams is the offensive coordinator, and some college guys who can bring you some fresh new juice to how you look at things, and Junior Adams and Connor Riley. So you credit Brian Schottenheimer for doing that and really leaning on the scouting department and Will McClay's group in terms of, hey, they've structured it to where Will McClay and his scouting department are cooking up their reports on these guys. They're picking the coaches' brains in terms of what are the players they want. They show them, these guys, and here's how they could help you. Here's why they can help you. And then ultimately it's kind of up to the group to make a collective decision. So I know they got off to a little bit of a late start in terms of the draft evaluation process because they were still building and rounding out their staff. But, I think Brian Schottenheimer has placed a lot of his trust in Will McClay and his scouting team to be able to help them find what they're looking for. And, I think they're looking for physical players. I think they're looking for players that that love football. That was a big emphasis in their pre-draft press conference today is Brian Schottenheimer and Will McClay want guys who love football and who want to get better. And so obviously that kind of sounds like a given, but there have been a lot of players around the league that, they get to the NFL level and they don't really treat it like a job. And you see some high round picks kind of start to fluster in their careers. So, there's a lot of needs on this team, and this is a big draft for the Cowboys, and it's everything that Brian Schottenheimer does is going to be put under a microscope just because of the nature of his situation that he's in. But I really do think that he's gotten off to a good start, and now we'll see what he can do with these players that he picks.
I completely
and it's not
agree.
really him picking;
Yeah.
it's a complete decision. So
Exactly.
if a pick doesn't turn out, it's not necessarily falling all on Brian Schottenheimer, right?
Sure.
Now, folks might discuss it that way because he's an easy scapegoat because
Right.
of all the things we just mentioned. But this is a collective decision, and obviously he's got to do his part and develop the guys that get in there. If the Cowboys want to call themselves a draft and develop franchise, and they've got to continue to do that, which I think they have a good track record of. But now it's his turn, and he's got to prove that he can do it.
Well, looking back on positional needs, as you were saying, I mean, the 2021 season for the Dallas Cowboys, obviously a lot of gaudy stats, especially in the receiving core. CeeDee Lamb emerging along with Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and a great receiving core as a whole. Since then, not so great, of course, for the trade of Amari Cooper that a lot of Cowboys fans may regret, of course, with getting only a fifth round pick. And since then, CeeDee Lamb has been obviously the clear number one for the Cowboys. And this receiving core cannot get any separation for the most part. One of the worst in the league in getting separation because these teams hound for CeeDee Lamb, the clear number one. Do you think for pick number 12, which the Cowboys have in the first round, it's a given to go for receiver, say getting a Matthew Golden from the Texas Longhorns, or maybe a Tetaroa McMillan from Arizona if he drops that far? Is it pretty much set to have a high-level receiver, or could you rely in the second round as well?
I don't think it's a given at all that they go wide receiver at 12. I think it's high on their list of options, but I don't think it is a guarantee at all that, like that. I know some folks are saying, hey, okay, it's going to be McMillan or Matthew Golden. I don't think that's the case. And we kind of talked about it on our draft show today is, if McMillan is off the board, which I think he will be, and Golden is still on the board there for you at 12, are there going to be guys on their board overall who are higher than Matthew Golden? And I think there will be. I've got Golden as my third receiver. I've got Luther Burden from Missouri ahead of him. I think for the Cowboys, Golden fits better than Burden does, but that doesn't. I think Burden is the better prospect. But how does their board overall stack up, and are they going to trust their board in that process? Are they going to lean on their board? I thought Stephen Jones had an interesting point earlier today in the pre-draft presser when he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, I'm not directly quoting him, just we obviously won't want to take, the best player available, but if there are guys, who are similarly graded, we've got similar grades on, and one of them is at a position of need and one of them is at a spot where we feel pretty good at, then, we might defer from the board a little bit and go for the guy that we need at a position that we feel like there's a vacancy in. And that's not to say they're going to go a full round grade down. So they're not going to take a third round grade in the second or anything of that if there's second round picks all over the board. But it's something where, if they've got Burden and Golden as first round grades, for example, and Golden is not that far off from Burden, do you feel like he's a better fit in your offense with what he's able to do? That's the question that, the Cowboys are going to have to answer. I think it's going to be an interesting discussion when the clock rolls around at 12. If McMillan is off the board and Golden is still there, you think about some of the other guys that there's been some buzz around, and Michael Williams, the edge rusher from Georgia, Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan, Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver from Ohio State, is another guy that I feel like they really like. So there's Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle from Ole Miss, the last couple of days has seemingly generated some buzz. So, are all those guys potential possibilities at the number 12 overall pick? It's a really interesting place to be at for the Cowboys in this draft, just because, from 10 to 40, I don't think the players are all that far apart in terms of skill and,
Sure.
And grade overall. It's not very, this class is full of depth, but in terms of guys who, could develop into starters or be depth pieces, not necessarily these superstar guys. And not that there's, always going to be 25 first round grades in every class, but it feels like you've got your top guys and there's a significant drop off in this group. So how much do they value that? And honestly, I think at 12, if they can trade back, they'd love to do that. I think that getting as much draft capital as they can in this class is a goal of theirs. But at the end of the day, you've got to have two to tango, and I don't know how many tango partners you're going to find this year.
Well, I mean, you look at also this offensive line. I don't think offensive line is going to be the pick for first round at all. I was a little bit surprised going for Tyler Guyton last year, but it ended up being a pick that I'm kind of satisfied with. There's a lot of untapped potential there, in my opinion. Not the best rookie season, but he's a lengthy guy. He has good arms. He has quick feet that can be worked on, and so I do think there's untapped potential there. So looking at the offensive line here, Zach Martin finally calling it a career. We knew that day was eventually going to come, and facing a lot more injuries than we've accustomed to for Zach Martin. Do you think that Robert Jones is enough at right guard for this offensive line, or do they hound it again, possibly in the mid rounds to get more beefed up at the offensive line?
Right now, it's hard to tell with Robert Jones, just because we haven't seen him practice or anything like that, and we don't know where he's at. Based on what we know about him for coming in, I feel like you can find a better option out there. That's not to say that Robert Jones can't start for it. He started all the games last year for Miami, but I think you can find a player that is better for you in this draft. Now, the question there is how early. How early do they find him, or do you have a guy already in the room that you feel like can be better? Is Brock Hoffman that guy? Is Brock Hoffman a guy who can beat Robert Jones out and start all 17 games for you? Offensive line is another one of those positions that, going back to the last question we didn't address, that's something that's very possible that the Cowboys use a premium pick on. I don't think you can build enough depth in that room, and I don't think they do either. So, they've used 2 out of their last 3 first round picks on an offensive lineman. I don't think they'll do so at 12, unless you're looking at a situation where Armand Membu from Mizzou or Will Campbell from LSU falls, I think that would change things a little bit. But, maybe in the second round, a guy like Donovan Jackson from Ohio State, if he's there for you at 44, I think that would bring up an interesting discussion. Tate Ratledge from Georgia might be a guy who falls because of the injury. Marcus Mbao from Purdue. Just, throwing names at the wall there. But it's certainly a position that I feel like the Cowboys will draft. I think an offensive lineman absolutely is going to be drafted. I think they've done so in the last 7 drafts. They've picked an offensive lineman. It's just kind of a matter of where. But from that right guard spot specifically, and this isn't a knock on Robert Jones or me saying he's a bad player, but I just feel like there are better players that you can try to get out there for you this season. And if it ends up being Robert Jones, then you hope that he can continue to play all 17 games, and you're not going to fill Zach Martin's shoes. So, nobody's going to step in there and be Zach Martin, but, just try to be a better unit and overall, work on a run scheme that can help open things up. And I think for the entire offensive line with, the hiring of Clayton Adams and bringing in Connor Riley, I think that group as a whole is going to be a lot better this year. The Cowboys are investing a lot in this offensive line. Brian Schottenheimer is investing a lot in the offensive line. And in the past, when the Cowboys have had their best teams, it's been because their offensive line has been so good. So I think Schotty's taking the right approach in that aspect. I think the coaching that they're going to get is going to be something that helps turn this around. And that's going to benefit guys like Tyler Guyton and Terrence Steele to continue to turn that corner. And so now the question is, who's that 5th guy that you bring in there, that right guard spot to really round this whole thing out?
And you hit the nail right in the head. Classic run offense is the Cowboys' model for their successful seasons. Bringing in now a Javonte Williams from the Denver Broncos, Miles Sanders, Deuce Vaughn still with the team along with Malik Davis. We'll see how they fare closer to training camp. But moving on to the other side of the ball here, one of my favorite gets for this Cowboys team, new DC, Matt Eberflus. Of course, Dan Quinn is no longer the DC after becoming the head coach of the Washington Commanders last season, leading them to the NFC Championship. And now the Cowboys have brought in Kenneth Murray Jr. They get Dante Fowler back after a career season, 11 and a half sacks. We saw them also trade for Kyer Elam from the Buffalo Bills. And this team is also, re-signed Osa Digizua, even got Solomon Thomas, a former top 10 pick from the Niners. When you look at this defense, do you think the needs more, it goes more to secondary and cornerback, or do you think it's more about beefing up the linebackers later on in the rounds?
Well, right now I feel like they've only got one starting corner, and that's Deron Bland, just because Trayvon Diggs is injured.
Right.
You've got what does Kyer Elam look like, right? Is a fresh start going to benefit him? Because if it's the Kyer Elam that we saw against the Chiefs, he was kind of getting picked on a little bit, and I feel like a fresh start's going to really benefit him. I think this is a good secondary staff for him to develop under, and it's a friendly scheme for defensive backs because if you're good in zone coverage, and Matt Eberflus is a big zone coverage guy, there's going to be a lot of that. So is Kyer Elam ready for that shift, and is he ready to kind of slide into that system? But aside from Deron Bland, who do you really feel confident about putting out there? And who do you put in the slot to replace Jordan Lewis? So I think that's a big spot. And I think the first 3 rounds you're absolutely going to see the Cowboys. Not absolutely. I would think that you see the Cowboys address the cornerback position in the first 3 rounds just because there's so much uncertainty there. I think you probably look more towards 44 for that pick. One guy I really like is Savon Rebel, the corner from East Carolina. I know that the gag is the Cowboys picking an injured guy at in the second round all the time. This is a guy who very easily could be the highest ranked corner in the class had he stayed healthy. 6'1", 202, good length. The Cowboys love their long corners in terms of tall guys who can move really well for their size, long arms, and Rebel fits that profile perfectly. You got Trey Amos from Ole Miss, Noah Williams from Cal as a guy, Azariah Thomas, Wanye Thomas's brother from Florida State. So there are guys in the first 3 rounds of this draft that you can probably feel pretty good about trotting out there on day one. Those are just a couple of the names listed, but I think looking at the two, I think cornerback is your bigger need, but at the same time, defensive tackle is not far behind. They've only got 5 on the roster right now. You cannot go into next season with 5 defensive tackles on your roster. You've got to beef up that offensive line, and so um, that's that's going to be paramount or excuse me, the defensive line. So I think they need a big one tech to pair alongside Oso Digizua. Mozzie Smith obviously has got to continue to take strides in the right directions. I think he took a step in the right direction this past season. Still not to the level where it needs to be for him, but I think he took a step in the right direction. I know Matt Eberflus and this defensive staff are really excited about getting to work with Mozzie Smith. Maybe they can help him kind of turn that corner in year 3. That would be huge. But still, you want to find that big body defensive tackle that can close those gaps for you in the middle. Is it a is there a situation where Kenneth Grant from Michigan drops to the second at 44? Alfred Collins from Texas, could he be there in the second or third round? Um, Jamari Caldwell from Oregon, all guys to kind of keep an eye on that would kind of fit that bill in terms of big bodies that plug up the middle of the defensive line and stop the run, something that the Cowboys have struggled to do at times.
And speaking of cornerback, news came out earlier Tuesday that former Defensive Player of the Year Stephon Gilmore was visiting the team in Frisco. And do with that what you will, but he's 34 years old, was with the Cowboys 2 seasons ago, left on a sour note after getting bounced by the Green Bay Packers in a game that was not even close at Jerry World. But could that be a signing you think that is, there for the Cowboys and defense that could even help them if he is signed at all?
Well, my understanding, based on several conversations, was that it wasn't a free agent visit that was submitted to the league, so it wasn't any sort of the Cowboys inquiring about him or anything like that. I think it was just as simple as he may have been in the area and he was passing through. Who knows? It was funny because we were in the pre-draft press conference. We look out the window and there he is walking
Just
by. And everybody kind of
walking.
looks around at each other like, did we really just see that? Like, oh,
That's
Stephon
Stephon
Gilmore.
Gilmore.
But with the need at corner, that's a guy where he's familiar with, the Cowboys organization. He's familiar with, you know, you can't say he's familiar with the scheme because he played for a different defensive coordinator,
Right.
but he knows what it's like to play alongside Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland. He knows what he needs to do. He's been in the NFL for a long time, and he's been great in the NFL for a long time. So it's a name that makes a lot of sense, but we'll see what goes on here in terms of whether or not that's a sign that they make. And you think they might also make it after the draft too, and make a lot of these decisions after the draft, just because you think about the comp pick formula, and do they don't want to give up more comp picks to other teams, so does it work in their favor to make those additions after the draft?
All right, Tommy, I think that'll do it for me. Where can we find you on social media?
Yeah, thanks, man. Well, you can go ahead and find me at Tommy_Yarrish on Twitter and X. That's where I'm primarily at, and all of our work was over at DallasCowboys.com. We've got a great team over there. We cover the team year long. It's a really cool site. I think we do a really good job. And I got a lot of great teammates over there, and it's been a lot of fun working with them.
All right, man. Thank you so much for joining us. Seriously, I was just honored that you joined our podcast again. It's just an honor to have you on here and just watching you grow, man. You keep on working hard, bro. You're doing an awesome job for the Dallas Cowboys.
Thanks, man. Anything for you guys, and appreciate y'all's support. And anytime you want me back, just say the word. It's my honor.
All right, thank you. Tommy Yarrish of the Dallas Cowboys.
What a great interview, Joe. I love that interview. I'm very happy that y'all talked about Matthew Golden go number 12 with the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, that's my pick. That's my pick. You can see the burnt orange on my shirt. You can see the little, oh,
Oh,
I can't
oh,
do it. It's too tough. I don't know why I can't. But the hook 'em thing right here, Texas flag right there. I got to go with my boy Matthew Golden. number
Probably
12.
he's probably my pick too. I love his quiet confidence. I mentioned this a few days ago in our little TCV Sports mock draft, which was hilarious. I loved every second of it. I watched it probably like twice over now. But yeah, Matthew Golden is probably my pick, and you have to have someone to compliment CD. You mentioned it a few days ago as well that this team cannot get separation, and it's been that way for the past 2, 3 years. Really been that way since they got rid of Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup's kind of been in the free fall, and it's just not that talented of a receiving core. You cannot rely on Jalen Brooks, Ryan Flournoy, and Kevontae Turpin as your second, third, and fourth receivers. Get a high level receiver that was on one of the best teams in the nation, and Matthew Golden, and I think this team can flourish.
Yeah, and I'll tell you again, I think I've said this multiple times on the podcast before, but Dak Prescott and Quinn Ewers are almost the exact same player in a sense that Dak, I mean, he can dot it. He can really dot it. He has some amazing throws, but he also has some really, really, really bad throws. And so that doesn't help when our receivers can't also get separation. Matthew Golden is a great player. I always say he's like 7'11". I get that that's an old term. People always use it, but he's always open, all right? He's always open. He has great route running, creates a lot of separation. I think that's a great pick for the Cowboys. If not, then I hope that they go defense, obviously. Jahad Campbell, maybe if he's still on the board, I think is a great candidate for that, especially if Overshown kind of struggles this season. And I'm hoping not, obviously, but two torn ACLs in the last 3 years doesn't bode well. Kind of looking at Jalen Smith in the past with his injury issues and how he started off with a great, but the injuries piled up and he just became almost unplayable.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't want to put that bad omen on uh, one of my favorite Cowboys players, DeMarvion Overshown, but got to be realistic at times. I think Jahad Campbell would be a great candidate. So,
Yeah,
you have
I pretty
anything
much agree
else?
with that. Yeah, I was gonna say like it's gonna be tough to also deal with the loss of Zach Martin,
Hmm.
the future Hall of Fame offensive guard. I was asking him also in the interview, of course, as you'll see that you know how are they going to replace this guy? Because Robert Jones, they picked up, I believe, from the Dolphins or the Panthers. It could have been now, but no, it might have been the Dolphins. But yeah, Robert Jones, who is right now is locked in at the right guard spot, and Tommy, of course, was talking about they could rely on him, but they haven't seen him much on the field. I haven't gotten really much of a look at him, but that could be something they target in the middle of the draft, finding some more linemen to beef up that right side. Because man. That's a big loss. And granted, he was hurt a lot last year, more hurt than we've ever been accustomed to him being.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's going to be a big loss. And O-line is definitely going to be something they target, I bet, in the future. And also, Tommy said defensive tackle.
Yeah, those are also great positions. Hey, we'll have Tyron Smith for one day, so don't worry. All right,
Well, let's use
retiring
him
a
for that
Cowboy.
one preseason day. Yeah, of course.
All right, moving on to the segment where most people are probably going to turn off the podcast, the Dallas Stars. Um, but they shouldn't, all right? But we know that it's realistic. Dallas Stars in the playoffs series currently, Stars up 2-1. Let me cut this off and then, hey, edit it out of that. Edit that out. The Avalanche are up 2-1. Oh no. Look, it's unfortunate that this is how our recording circumstances go. But this is going to be a hard fought battle. We don't know if I want to edit it out again, being like definitive with if Gabriel Landeskog is going to play for the Avalanche or not. He's coming back from 3 years of being absent, or being injured, not absent, but just injured, and um, gotta respect him with his recovery. I know it's been a hard road back, but I hope that the Stars are still able to beat him. Um, and Hopefully, this guy in the back right here, Miro Heiskanen, can come back soon. Obviously, it doesn't look like he'll be back for game 3, and I'll look like an idiot if he is, but it doesn't sound like he will be. He's traveling with the team. Jason Robertson is not, which makes it seem like maybe Robertson isn't even coming back for the series. We'll see. But Miro looking increasingly likely to play in the later half of this series. Going to be a big get for the Stars who have kind of just had defensive problems in this last few weeks. Definitely had a couple lapses and kind of just giving up easy goals, giving up breakaways. They played pretty good against Colorado in these first two games. Colorado's just been kind of their goals have been sometimes supernatural, at other times just really good goals that you can't really stop. Um, and I think that Jake Ottinger hasn't played as good as he can, but he has shown up in moments. He's made those saves that have helped save the game, especially in game two. The power play at the very end of the game for the Avalanche, or the very end of the third period. Um, Ottinger had a great save there that saved the game and helped us even the series, because you look at going to Colorado down 2-0, looks a lot different than what it did against Vegas last year. Um, but we don't have to think about that, you know?
The streak is finally over. And that's a big weight off their backs, I'm sure, to just finally move ahead after a win. Been a long time coming. Been what, like, I guess 2 weeks since their last win, right?
It's been about that long, probably longer.
Wow, man, 2 weeks. But moving on to say Mikko Rantanen, do you think that's just like, is it concerning to have that slow start for him, possibly in the first two games for you? Or is it just, sometimes how hockey goes?
It is a little concerning, and I was telling myself that it's like if the Stars win game two, it's going to be off the back of Mikko Rantanen. He has to do something here to show his worth for Dallas. Um, I'm sure it's pretty odd for him to play against Colorado right now. That was his team. I mean, he scored over 100 career playoff points with Colorado. Um, but I mean. There's a lot of players on Dallas right now that have just kind of not done enough in this first half, especially with or first part of the series, especially with Jason Robertson out. I hope I'm proven wrong with Game Three tonight, but um, players like Matt Duchene, players like Mikko Rantanen, of course, Wyatt Johnston. Wyatt Johnston kind of picked it up in Game Two, but these are some of those players that need to be high impact players that we need to rely on again, especially with Robertson out, to get those chances on net. Not even really score ideally, but just get shots on net and also be able to get those rebounds. The Stars have struggled with kind of going into the side of the Colorado ice, shooting one shot, and then kind of, you know, giving up the puck, not getting rebounds, not winning faceoffs is a big thing that the Stars haven't been able to do. Not even getting in the zone during power plays. The power plays have been super weak with Johnston, without Robertson. You have Johnston out there that hasn't really, I don't think has gotten really a shot on net in these power plays. Mikko Rantanen the same almost. It's there's some players that definitely need to step up. Uh, One player in the past that for the Stars that kind of has been a playoff riser for them is Rupe Hintz, and I hope to see more of him being an impact for the Stars on offense, because he had that one goal in game one, but this first line, I know that it's changing so drastically ever with the injuries and just the struggles with scoring, but they really need to show their impact. That fourth line was what saved the game, obviously, and was showed the most hustle. Blackwell just being put into the roster in game two, obviously had something to prove. Sam Steele, um, these players were just, I felt like they were everywhere. They were swarming the puck and just swarming in the Avalanche, and were just really good with just kind of, providing toughness, putting some pressure on Colorado. Loved the fourth line in game two. Those are the type of games that, you know, if you don't, if you don't have the fourth line performing, I don't know, if you don't have the fourth line performing in the playoffs, you're not going to win. Like you need the fourth line to produce, and they produced amazing. I mean, it was just fantastic how they played in game two. I hope that carries on because we won't win this series without our fourth line kind of doing something to help us out. So,
You already know the series is going seven. I'm telling you right now, the way it's being played just in 2 games. it feels like a 7 game series, if not minimum six. But it just feels like it's going to be a very physical series between a team that struggled in the past and a team that's kind of done what they always do late in the season, get hot like in the Avs, and it's just the matchup that has been historic. And hopefully the Stars can get past them again. But again, it's going to be a tough task for them heading now to Colorado. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, and you talk about the series last year against Colorado. They went 1-1 against the Avalanche at home. Both of those games, they had big leads. They ended up blowing those leads. Game two, they almost did. They ended up winning, but game one, they're up 3-0 and ended up losing in overtime. There's a lot of concerns with the Stars against Colorado last year going in the game three, and they went in Colorado and won both games going back home. Um, Obviously. I feel like that's a little bit more unrealistic this year. I think that they still are, they're still adjusting. They haven't, they just won their first game in 9 games. So it's kind of hard to see them realistically winning 2 games in Colorado, especially again with how Colorado just seems like they are, you know, they're they're probably one of the Stanley Cup favorites. They're probably a Stanley Cup favorite over us at this point. So seems a little unrealistic, but never say never.
Indeed, man. Like I was saying, like with the Rangers last week, I've seen crazier.
You have.
That team was very bad the last 3 weeks of that season, and we remember it. We remember
Dude,
those
my
rants we
goodness,
had on
man.
this podcast. We remember that. We need to
Oh
go
my
back and
goodness.
watch that by the way, 'cause we went off on I think the Twins or something series, Twins or
Oh, the
Brewers,
Twins and
whatever it
Astros
was.
series after
On the
that? Oh,
Astros, when fucking Altuve was hitting home run after home run. Oh yeah, we
God, I
went off
scored
on
like
them.
30 runs that series.
It
How
was
were we supposed
insane.
to win? We ended up beating them in seven in the playoffs, man. I mean,
It was something special for us. Just to ignite a fire under us. Who knows? Maybe this could be something that the Stars go through. I've seen crazy with that. You can lose all you want in the regular season, but it's a new season in the playoffs. It's an entire new way for you to get back on the right foot. So glad that the Stars can get that losing streak snapped.
absolutely, absolutely. Quick little water break here
Halftime.
before
Sorry.
we get
30 second, 30 second.
out of timeouts. What are you talking about? All right. Well, we're gonna go into the Mavericks talk. So,
Boy.
boy,
Every
oh,
week. Every week.
every week there's something new, man.
It's
But
ridiculous.
anyways, let's go ahead and get into Pirtle first before we do all this because I mean,
We have to
we're gonna
decompress.
oh wait, hold up. Let me get the Pirtle. Did not have it set up. All right. All right, let's get this going.
Victorious last time through for us, I think. I forgot who the player was. Let me
Well,
see.
doesn't matter who the player was. This is gonna be the White Powell this week.
It's all about the
Wow.
present.
Wow.
Dang, bro.
It said
This is a Celtic. This is a
like
Celtic. Let's
quite
go
literally
Luke.
the opposite of Dwight Powell.
Let's go Luke Cornett.
But Luke Cornett's a center.
Yeah,
Want
true.
to go Peyton Pritchard, six
Let's go
man of the year?
Peyton. Okay, East guard. That's number 11, taller than 6'1".
Hmm. Number 11, not in the Atlantic Division, 26-25.
It's a Nick.
Can't be a Nick. It's not Atlantic. It's 11. I don't know players like that anymore.
So I'm not falling off.
I've totally fallen off. I wonder why. Number 11, man. Oh,
Magic? Magic player?
Magic Hawks. Um, Wizards. Like, come on. How am I supposed to know Wizards? Danny Avdija isn't even on Washington anymore. Um,
Mm. What's the other
Cavs,
source?
Pistons. It's not Tim Hardaway. He's not that young anymore. So it can't be the Pistons. He's number 11.
Mm.
Let's just go with a player. Let's go with a player. Let's keep it going. Go with like Tyrese Halliburton. No, he's not number 11, but
Yeah, just want to get a oh my
ooh.
Lord, Central Division. Central Division guard, 6'5", 25.
So literally Tyrese Halliburton, but
Just a different number.
just a different number.
Come on, man.
So we know it's not the
Uh,
Pistons because number 11 is Tim Hardaway.
a
I'm
six
almost
five
certain.
guard.
So it has to be Milwaukee,
Asar
Cleveland.
Thompson? Asar?
No,
How tall is
ooh.
Asar?
He wouldn't be 25 though, but it would be 6'5". I think I mean, it's
Ah,
who's on the Bulls that would be number 11 at 6'5"? It wouldn't be Josh Giddey.
Kobe? Kobe Mitchell? I mean, not Kobe Mitchell. Whatever his name is.
Kobe
I'm forgetting
White.
his name. Kobe White.
Is he 6'5" though? I don't think he is. Let's
He's
go.
also not. There's no way he's 25 also.
Let's go Josh Giddey. I know it's
I
not
think it's
Josh
getting
Giddey, but it's Chicago. Okay, it is
ah
Chicago. Great.
6'5". It's that I was gonna say the new guy they drafted, but he's not 25.
It's crazy. I don't know anyone. I mean, oh, number 11. It's not Kobe White
Six
because Kobe
five.
White's number 0, I think.
He's also not even. He's definitely older than 25 at this point. I'd
Number
be stunned if he
11,
was not.
man. Oh, this is really hurting. Oh,
Uh,
is it? It's not Kevin Herter either. Kevin Herter's got to be over 25 at this point, right?
yeah, he definitely is. Oh,
26.
wow. He's a young guy still. Kevin Herter, East
Let's show the
Chicago.
silhouette.
Oh, that's AO. That's AYO. I can't believe I forgot
Oh,
about this.
Ao.
Yeah,
Oh,
Ayo
I
Dosunmu.
haven't heard of
Yeah.
his name in a minute. I can't
My
lie.
bad.
What's his stats this year?
Fantasy monster.
What was even his stats this year, huh?
He's more like a stat sheet stuffer guy. He's not like a stat sheet stuffer guy. He's a role player. I don't know how much he scored. Let me look it up. But it's not
A 12
insane.
and a half points.
Yeah, it's not gonna wow you, but it's a good bench. He's a good bench player.
Okay, okay. Good enough to get them in the play-ins, huh? All right, so the
The
Dallas
Chicago
Mavericks,
Invitational.
the Chicago, Miami, Atlanta Invitational. That's crazy. We got the Dallas Mavericks. Of course, their season ended. They beat the Sacramento Kings in the 10th, 9th seed play-in, 120 to 106, and then ended up losing to the Grizzlies to get eliminated, 120 to 106. Of course, I think everybody loves their favorite moment from that was, well, maybe not favorite, maybe most depressing moment is after, yeah. I see what you're doing. It's straight from an SNL skit. That reminds me of the Key and Peele skit actually more. You know what
Yeah,
I'm talking about, the Key and Peele.
yeah.
Uh, I mean, it's
Every time a team scores, they cut to that dude. Every single time.
oh yeah. Well, it wasn't even that. It's like every single time the Mavs did something, it was like I couldn't even watch the Kings game. I couldn't even watch the Grizzlies game because every single time something would happen. They have to pan over to him. It's like he's gotten his wish. He is the Dallas Mavericks. Like he is the face of the Dallas Mavericks now. There's nobody else contending for him. Dirk barely shows up to the games anymore. He doesn't do anything with the front office. Nico Harrison is what people think of when people think of the Mavericks now, and it is just hell. It's hell. It's so bad. He had his presser a couple days back. Finally had some cameras. They didn't have a selective press group like they did last time. And there were some pretty interesting questions. One of my favorite, Isaac Harris, a Locked On Mavs podcast, just straight up asking him, why shouldn't you be fired?
That's a long time listener of that podcast, going back to high school, man. That was a pretty funny moment. And he was kind of a little stunned that he thought he was gonna keep going with that question, but it was such a short, straightforward question that he kind of demanded a straightforward answer. And that's what he gave him, I guess. He said he thought he did a great job. And just, oh my gosh, man. It's embarrassing at this point. My favorite moment was him just being even more tone deaf and saying, I didn't realize how valuable he was to this city. I misunderstood that. I'm like, Are you serious? At this point, he has to stop doing these press conferences because you're just digging yourself in a deeper hole. There's no coming back from this, Nico Harrison. There is none coming back from it. So you might as well just stop doing the press conferences. I know I kind of want you to speak up and not try to hide as much and be in the little, you know, alleyway right there in the stadium, just standing there while people shout fire Nico. But at this point, the press conferences are useless. It's just you try to act like you deserve your job anymore after, self-sabotaging this team. At this point, he probably should just wrap it up because it's just embarrassing every week now.
Yeah, and Charles Barkley even told him to stop doing press conferences on NBA on TNT. Um, it's just, yeah, it's awful. I mean, and even the articles that came out, him firing Casey Smith under the circumstances that he was at was probably the worst thing that I've heard. Um, from Nico Harrison, and that's a guy who traded Luka Doncic. I thought that that was just so incredibly shitty as a human for him to do that, and also just not a good idea. Casey Smith is straight up the best trainer in the NBA and has been for years, and like has been the trainer for Team USA. Why do you got to fire him?
An Olympic trainer that the Mavs have had for 10, 15 years prior to him being there. It's
I know.
just unbelievable,
You
man.
fire him when he is out of town treating his gravely ill mother. What a piece of shit you are, Nico. Um, please get out of the city. There's nothing else that I can say about him. It's just straight up, just unbelievable. What he has done to this franchise. Absolutely burned it to the ground. I don't have to say too much about it because we already all know that. Um, yeah, and I mean, and you can tell that defense wins championships because we go into that Memphis Grizzlies game and they are uh not playing defense. Um, gave up 120 points, was down 20-30 by the end of the, at points in the first half. Made their comeback in the second half, but it was a little too late. Had the fake comeback. Great job, Dallas Sports.
Classic, classic. We've seen it too many times.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, we don't have to talk too much about the Grizzlies game, but just it's a shame. It's a shame that they couldn't win that game because I think that they would have put up a better fight than losing by 50 plus points to the Oklahoma City Thunder in game one. Um, but not a good game, obviously. You could see that the Mavs are still not just a Kyrie Irving away from a championship. They are still multiple pieces away from a championship. And that's what Nico Harrison said in his pressers that he believes we'll be competing for championships next year. Well, how? How? And so we'll try to answer that question for him. Where do the Mavs go from here, Joseph? I mean,
Boy, when you have an aging Kyrie Irving who's probably going to come late in the season, the way he plays, I doubt he's going to be as shifty as we've accustomed him to being. And then you have an old AD still riddled with injury, as we literally just saw after a season of being healthy this past year. As soon as he comes to the Dallas Mavericks, what we said would happen, happened. What went wrong. As Stephen A. Smith says, what could go wrong, went wrong, as he
maybe we
said.
still had Casey Smith. Maybe it wouldn't have been a big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah, giving up, your Olympic trainer to the New York Knicks does not help. But, Anthony Davis coming back, still aged, injury riddled. I think they have to go possibly wing. I guess wing, because look, Max Christie was good to start that trade. After a while, it wasn't as sexy as it was as I thought it was going to
You're telling
be.
me he's not the next SGA?
We saw some nasty agendas when that dude first got here and was winning some games. We saw some
So
nasty
delusional,
agendas.
man. Everybody was just
Pure,
very
pure,
delusional.
pure delusion. Pure delusion. But look, he's a solid wing player, but I think we need someone a little bit more athletic in the draft. I don't know who it'll be. It won't be a top, 10 lottery pick or anything because, well, I don't think. Are they on the border of that?
They're at the 11th pick.
Yeah, they could, I guess. Usually the Mavs don't have good lottery luck, but we've seen how they got Luka Doncic and that great draft, the legendary draft back in 2018. But as far as moving up to a top four, top three pick, I don't see that happening. We know how this goes.
Yeah.
But The Mavericks probably should get a wing, in my opinion. Maybe a guard of the future, possibly. I'm kind of stuck between those two because I think they're pretty locked in the front court, which is a position they needed for years, and it got fixed eventually by having, a young Derek Lively and trading for Daniel Gafford, which was a good Nico trade back when he was known as a solid GM. But I think they're solid in the front court. I think they see either a wing or a possible young replacement at one or two guard for Kyrie Irving and the age Klay Thompson, of course.
Yeah, and I mean we talk about the Mavericks' luck. I mean, if this would be the year that they could flip their fortune because they've never gone up in the NBA draft lottery. In all of their attempts, they have never gone up. They've only gone down or stayed pat at their pick that they're supposed to get. Maybe since, put my tinfoil hat on again, maybe since the NBA helped construct the Luka Doncic trade, maybe they'll help us out and give us a pick. Maybe Cooper Flag, maybe the number one. Maybe it's already set in stone. Let me have my agenda, all right? But
We will be pushing that.
let me have it. All right. So what a surprise though. The Mavericks have put themselves in a bad spot. I think their first priority in this free agency is, of course, they gotta, just for the sake of the fan base, even though it's in a tough spot, but you gotta secure the future of Kyrie Irving in a Mavericks jersey.
Hmm.
He has a 44 million player option right now. He's at
Hmm.
33 years old. He's not going to play. They say they expect him to come back in January, which may be a little bit too soon for his age and his injury. But I mean, it's pivotal to get Kyrie Irving back, no matter what. You're going to put yourself in a tight spot because, you might have somebody that you have to put long term to return to this team and put some money into, especially with our cap issues this year, and unfortunately not any future prospects, of course. But you got to do it just for the sake of the fan base. And I don't know, maybe add some like health incentives or like performance incentives into the contract to make it less risky, maybe. I don't know, but I mean, it's I say you got to prioritize re-signing Kyrie Irving first thing you got to do just because I mean, my goodness, you're not going to have a fan base if you let Kyrie Irving go. And at the very least, if he says he's out, he doesn't want to be here anymore, which I completely respect Kyrie. It would make me cry, but I completely respect it if you do. You got to get at least a sign and trade.
It's just, I cannot believe to this day that Mark Cuban, we talked about last week, did he have a hand in this downfall? Because he definitely looks guilty. I have to think he feels guilty. I cannot believe they sold this team to somebody who literally has like no history, but also doesn't seem to even care about basketball. That's the thing that blows my mind about this thing. This guy, like, he literally like shows you in the interviews he does and these press conferences that he could give like he could give like a rat's behind about, basketball and the NBA. Definitely was not watching, you can tell before. Only knows like the big time players. Does not know like a single bench guy. But even in that comment he made months ago about, Shaquille O'Neal, when talking about fitness and being, locked in into a team's regimen, and that not being the case with Luca, I'm like, this dude's bringing up Shaq in terms of the guy that Kobe used to criticize for being lazy. That Shaq, granted a Hall of Famer still, but could have been top three, top four, top five. This guy has no idea what he's doing, Patrick Dumont. And I cannot believe this guy is the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, a team that was at one time respected, TJ, for front office leadership with guys like Mark Cuban, treating guys on the road, treating the visitors that would roll into the AAC, being loyal with guys like Dirk Nowitzki. Forget all of that now. I mean, the reputation is absolutely cooked. We say it every week. The rep is cooked. These two clowns have ruined this organization from top to bottom. I don't know how this franchise really bounces back from this in my lifetime. I'm being honest. I really don't know how they bounce back. I don't know if we'll ever see a championship, a true championship contender again. Next year, in my opinion, is going to be their best bet because that's when Nico Harrison is really banking on to see if the trade actually works its way through. I don't think he's going to be here in 2 years. Like I've said, Nico Harrison will not be here in 2 years.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't think next year they will be a championship contender. Especially, I mean, what they got to do. I mean, they got background. Their backcourt, not background. Sorry, their backcourt is atrocious right now with Kyrie Irving being hurt. Even if you re-sign him, obviously he's going to be out for a majority of this regular season. Spencer Dinwiddie, unreliable and also an unrestricted free agent. Dante Exum, also an unrestricted free agent. Jaden Hardy, uh, bad. Um, you got to go get somebody in free agency. Um, I was looking at it actually. I think that some of the best players that they could go get, some guy who could be just somebody who can play make. You know, we need playmakers, obviously, and somebody who could just be that stopgap, stopgap creator while Kyrie Irving heals. You got Malcolm Brogdon, player that could come here. Karis LeVert. I think you could also, of course, pick somebody up in the draft, but inexperience is going to be what kills him probably with playmaking and such, unless you draft Luka Doncic, who was amazing right off
Nightmare.
the get-go. But
This
um,
this is a nightmare.
it is a nightmare. But
Uh,
anyways, yeah, it's just we don't have a lot of we don't have a lot of hope. You can't blame us.
Yikes.
So let's go into a team that we do have a lot of hope for, the Texas Rangers.
Of course, the
Uh,
Texas Rangers, TJ, that have been interesting, done slightly better on offense, but man, Jock Peterson struggling. Oh, for his last 40 has set a Rangers record
yep.
for the biggest hitless streak in team history. Of course, the MLB record is what's his name? Not Chris Young. Am I getting it wrong? He's played for the Orioles and
Chris
Rangers.
Davis.
Chris Davis, excuse me. 0 for 54, if you remember that one season to start for Baltimore a few years ago. That's the record, 0 for 54. Hopefully, Jock does not get there. But man, they've been trying to hype him up doing the whole Trey Turner thing when he was struggling. Everybody stand up in that Dodgers series. Let's give him a round of applause and cheer him on. A little bit more positive thing that you don't see from a lot of fans because a lot of fans, especially in the East Coast, when you struggle, they boo you at literally every turn. Every time you take a strike, every time you swing and miss, and every time you get out.
We
But
know
they're
what team we're
trying.
talking about.
Yeah, we know. But yeah, man, it's hard to watch for a guy like Jock Peterson, who I thought was going to be an impact starter at DH. But I don't know if you watched this past game from start to finish. I had to miss a little bit of the middle with the Athletics, the West Sacramento Athletics, that is. But yeah, going to that Sutter Health Park and a change of lineup for the Texas Rangers. Bochy, you might have done it again. You might have done it again. Marcus Simeon no longer hitting leadoff. One of the hottest hitters in the team, Josh Smith, who by the way was playing center field last night, did an excellent job as well. Moved
Gosh.
over to short eventually after Corey Seager unfortunately got hurt. But Josh Smith was the leadoff guy. Worked out. Marcus Simeon hit fifth. Also worked out. Probably his best game of the season.
I've been waiting. We have been waiting for Josh Smith to be the leadoff hitter. This is
This is
what
a year
we
in the
have
making.
wanted. It makes so much sense. He's not a huge power hitter. You don't need your player to be a huge power hitter.
Hmm.
He, but he is. I mean, he can definitely. I mean, we saw it against Oak. Let me
Hey,
stop myself
look.
there. Let me stop myself there.
Scratch that before John Fisher finds
Against
you, buddy.
Sacramento, we saw that against Sacramento. On Tuesday night, Josh Smith hit a home run in the fifth inning. Um, but that dude knows how to get on base. 456 on base percentage this year, and that's not a small sample size either. He's been playing consistently again this year. He's getting on base almost half the time. That is who you need leading off, and I love the idea of putting Wyatt Langford at two as well. That was a great idea by Bruce Bochy. Do you agree with that as well? Do you think?
I love it. That was the first game, by the way, for Corey Seager to be hitting lower than second in the lineup. since I believe July 2022. I saw.
That's very interesting. But I think
Yeah,
that that's what we,
I
I mean,
loved
I
it.
love Corey Seager going second too, but I think Corey Seager right now at the three spot, of course, hopefully he's not injured for too long. I mean, my goodness, this is just
It's every year.
something that we have to deal with constantly. Um, but it's kind of worth the risk with Corey Seager, obviously, about just how good of a player he is. Um, I think that putting him third is not a bad idea. I like, I think Langford and Seager could be interchangeable in that 2-3 spot. They're both amazing players. Langford is just having one hell of a season so far, looking like he'll be our home run leader this year with how his power has just been. Um, but I mean, you look at this offensive explosion that they had. We've been waiting for something like this. Um, and it came after, coincidentally, maybe not coincidentally, after Bruce Bochy finally made the necessary changes to the lineup. I mean, do you think that this is going to keep going on? I mean,
Again, like I was saying, this team is running out of excuses last week because White Langford was hurt at the time, and Josh Young just came back from his injury. So I feel like I still have to give them leeway now when their best player is probably going to be out with that hamstring injury, and now that he's out, you're still not going to have a fully healthy lineup look. But if this is how it looks, though, how we saw last night, this is a money lineup, and I like it. Of course, not having Seager hitting second, but having Josh Smith lead off is a game changer. We've been saying it for like probably going on a year now that Marcus Semien is just not that leadoff guy anymore. And look, when he was with the Athletics, he was not a leadoff guy. I felt like it was more of a thing that happened when he got to the Rangers. That Bruce Bochy was starting to really move towards the top of the lineup like this. Because with the A's, I believe he was more of like this spot right here, five or six or seven, middle of the
maybe it was
lineup
number two, I think.
for the whole time.
I think he was number two for Oakland,
I
if
could
I
have sworn he
remember
was middle
right.
of the lineup, at least in the beginning. Maybe it changed towards the end. But when I look at his stats this year. I think he just doesn't have that anymore for the start of the lineup. It might be just, time for to surrender Josh Smith for the rest of the year, who I believe should be an everyday player at this point. And we've seen Josh Smith. You said he didn't have. He's not, you don't need your leadoff hitter to have a lot of power, but he can have occasional power sometimes. And you saw it on that Tuesday game, like you pointed out, the home run that he had to make it, I believe, a 5-2 game at one point in the middle of the game. So Josh Smith, I can't even say enough about him, man. There's a time I was just really disgruntled with him because he seemed like he was a free out. If you remember those days, TJ,
Oh, I remember
seemed like
those.
he was just hardly competing in at bats. Then eventually he started to get that patience. He started to work these counts. He got on base much better starting last year. Had a walk-off winner against the Astros. And it's only been up from there. And I do remember like when we posted a TikTok about Josh Smith after that walk-off, I think after one of our episodes. There's a guy who had a lot of followers on that TikTok. Can't remember his name, but he was in the comments in the chat and it's like, oh yeah, we saw this come from Josh Smith a mile away. Used to play against him back in so and so league when we were like in our 20s, like in this minor league system. He's always been a stud. And that's really coming to fruition here with Josh Smith, the 27-year-old super utility player who can literally play every position on the diamond. It's just unbelievable how great he is right now.
Where is he in the MVP odds? Gotta know. We gotta start putting that. We gotta start pushing that agenda out as well.
Tyler Mahle, by the way, leading the league in ERA. Unfortunately, would
Absolutely.
not be the winner after a great
I
game
know.
on Sunday.
About to say.
1-0 loss. But
Shout out to Patrick Corbin though, coming
oh yeah,
in,
Patrick Corbin holding it down, by the
holding it
way.
down.
I cannot believe it. But Jack Leiter pitched a great rehab start this past Tuesday as well. I believe 4 Ks, one walk, but no runs. He should be back soon after that blister injury on his hand. But Patrick Corbin, man, I don't know what they're gonna do with him, I guess, when Jack Leiter comes back, because you might as well stick around and drop somebody else. Because Patrick Corbin, he's probably gonna get an option, I'm guessing. But you know, Corbin has been pitching much better than I anticipated. That's
Oh
now
yeah,
start.
absolutely.
Yeah, after having one of the worst runs in Major League history towards the end of his Nationals tenure, he's come back with a vengeance.
Oh yeah, look at that. So after the Rangers finish their series with the Athletics, can't call them Oakland. I always forget that. They go to San Francisco will play a 3-game series against the Giants, and then they come back home and play a 4-game series against the Athletics. Well, not again, but they play the Athletics again. So it will be a 4-game series this time back at home, and then they'll finish that homestand with Seattle finishing next week. So, um, Rangers good shape, 14-9, 2 games ahead in the AL West. That'll do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. I know that this was definitely a jam-packed episode. Probably definitely has to be over an hour. We'll see. But that's what I'm guessing my odds like probably negative 500 for being over 100 or being over an hour.
Hey man, we were yapping. We were yapping. This is a good old classic one-on-one yap that we used to have in the past. Oh yeah. We'll take it though.
But I mean, there was a lot to address, obviously, with the playoffs and the draft happening. So, I feel I feel very thankful if you stuck through this entire episode with us. Um, I appreciate it. Um, you can also if you're still with us, you can also subscribe if you haven't, and also share this video. We post every Thursday at 11 a.m. on YouTube and Spotify at 214 Sports Show. And you can also follow our socials on Instagram, Twitter/X, and TikTok. That'll be at 214 Sports Show. I think I messed that up, right? We're at the 214 Sports Show for YouTube and
I
Spotify.
think one of them is 214 Sports Show and the other is whatever it is. You type in 214 Sports, it'll pull up. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, we
nice.
got we got motion like that. No, no, we don't. We don't. But if you just
We
pull
do
it up,
sometimes, especially on
we do
TikTok. You
sometimes.
should follow us on TikTok. We got some
Oh yeah, for
motion there
sure.
sometimes. So, anyways, that'll do it for today's episode. I guess we should also shout out our own socials, I guess. So you can follow me, TJ.Krillowitz on Instagram, TJ_Krillowitz on Twitter/X. Joe, you go real quick.
Yeah, on Instagram you can follow me at Joseph_Duffey99. Same on Twitter at Joseph_Duffey99 and on TikTok. Don't really post there a lot, but at Joe_Duffy.
All right. And once again, episode 64. Thank you very much for watching the Macau Granlund episode. We will see you next week. Hopefully, we'll be playing some Pantera. Have a good one.